And let's see if we start dropping any frames. I'm also downloading some stuff in the background, which theoretically shouldn't interfere with upload bandwidth anyway. So we'll see. The download is going to take like another 20 to 30 minutes at most. And so far it seems to be quite good anyway. So we'll probably be good to go. Now, yesterday we did a stream instead of on Tuesday because I broke my project, and we're gonna just keep going where we left off, really. I want to pull up my levels. I want to fix the damage, like collision stuff for this boss fight first, and then I think the entire tutorial will be playable and finished up again. At which point we'll move on to setting up the doors for the rest of like the first dungeon of the game. I also want to point out something that is maybe mildly interesting. I probably like want to look into setting up some stuff for the metallic surfaces in here as well. I haven't looked at that yet. But for a lot of the enemies in my game, let's actually set my chat up properly as well so I can see the chat. I had normal maps because that makes sense to do, right? To have like detail in a texture. But I also kind of found that there is a bit of an issue with normal maps. And I'm going to show you that issue. I'm not going to show you in this map because the lighting for it is quite bad. So we're gonna somewhere over here. It's this one. Well, we'll get there. There we go. Okay. So if we take this guy, for instance, right? This is one that has a very obvious difference. So this is without the normal map. I've disabled the normal map in the materials, which we can see right here. I have disabled the normal map for it, which will also save me like per material an entire 2K or 4K texture, which is going to be like better for performance, obviously. And it might also allow me in some cases to get away with slightly low resolution image textures as well. So I think like this whole cell shading thing in the end is actually going to be pretty good for performance, at least as far as like VRAM usage goes. It's not going to change anything about the complexity of the lighting of everything, obviously. But if I re-enable the normals and I pick the normal map for this guy, right? There's a lot of stuff going on here for the normal map because most of the detail is baked into the normals. But because of the line shader working on normals as well, it does that after the normal map has been applied to the mesh. There might be a way for me to change that actually. There might be a way for it to only sample the... That's actually a fantastic question. Is there... we'll look into that in a moment. But as of right now, it uses the normals from the textures that I provide into the shader as part of the whole line shader thing. But things with very fine normals, specifically normals that are very fine detailed like mesh grids like this, they just kind of become a little too much. This guy is just like entirely, like 50% of the view of this guy at this point is just black because of the normal map. So that's why I figured, hey, maybe let's remove the normals. That way we can actually see the colors, and it saves the one texture. But I actually have an idea, because if we reapply the normals, and I actually just set this post-processing to happen before the DOF, does that change anything? No. I think it always... Yeah, I think it always will take in the normal maps as well. I don't know if there's a way to like change that necessarily. Let's see real quick. I don't think so. Yeah, because in the end, like, the shader doesn't have a difference. Like, it doesn't understand the difference between an actual face normal and like a pixel normal. Because that probably like gets smushed together in the actual like rendering pipeline. Because why would it keep those two as separate things? It can only like lead to issues. So I don't think there's a way of like splitting that out again and making the line shader only work on like actual phase normals. So the solution to that is just to not use the normal maps anymore, which actually shows the like cell shading a lot better as well, as you'll be able to see if I turn this back on. Yeah, we effectively can't see that this is being cell shaded. And the cell shading is most important on the characters. It also is like nice to have in the environment and that kind of stuff, but it is intensely the most important in the characters. So I'm going to, for the most part, going forward, when making the characters, I will keep in mind that, hey, I'm not going to be exporting normal maps. I'm going to need to bake things down into just their base texture maps if I want to have like texture detail. It does make them look a lot better, in my opinion. And again, I think that also means that because we are compressing all the potential colors that exist into effectively just, I think, 12 colors with a little bit of like color, 24 colors at the moment. I think 12 colors is actually fine. 12 colors with a little bit of color bleeding, so it's more than actual like 12 colors. But that also means that we probably don't get that much like actual color detail outside of like solid colors with slight like shading differences. So we probably don't need that high resolution textures either to make this work. Which gets me all the way back to, I think, choosing to go for cell shading. Initially, like it's gonna make my art look a little bit better. But I also think that it's going to then, in turn, maybe increase performance at the end of the day. Not because the cell shader inherently saves any rendering like performance, because the way Unreal's renderer works, obviously, it renders everything in like a full like PBR like deferred rendering pipeline. And then we go post-processing over it to make it cell shader, which is also why we have like these noisy lines in some places for the cell shading. That's not something we can do that much about, I'm afraid. But everything, like, aside from the actual like rendering itself, making the models while keeping in mind that they are supposed to like be cell shaded, I think is going to mean that the models themselves, or not specifically the models, but mostly the textures, are going to end up potentially being cheaper than wanting every texture to be super high detail. So I'm quite excited for that. That was a little bit of a side tangent right at the start of the stream. Hello back to the Fat Cat Show. Big Fat Cat Show. Man, my brain's just going a mile a minute. It's not letting me stop. It's just actually read the name. Awesome character model. Thank you. I'm actually quite like proud of this one. I like it. It also took a while to make. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go back to what I was actually going to do, and that is change or finish up some of the attack animation stuff for this dude. Which, yeah, that's what I started with. Is his metallic material still doesn't quite work very well with the cell shader. The video that I followed to make this cell shader, I didn't come up with this myself, like, at all, does have a thing about improving metallic materials a little bit more. Because the issue is with metallic materials is that they tend to like have a very they have a very broad or large amount of cells compared to non-metallic materials, and they do something with that. I don't know exactly what. I think they use a metallic mask to like quantize the luminosity differently for metallic things. I'm not entirely sure. I'll probably look at that this weekend. But for now, the thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into his animations and do some stuff. First and foremost, I want to know what is your scale. Okay, so you're about 2/3 scale. That's going to be important for setting up the animations. Probably... Well... There's a few models that I made in the game that are, how do I say this, kind of scaled shit. They are scaled either way too big or way too small, and I had to adjust that scale, which is kind of annoying with the way the damage collision works now. So maybe those should scale with... Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let's just first open up the animations for this dude, which are... Fantastic questions. Where do they exist? Just open it up in C++, not C++, in Blueprint. I think I have like a class default. So I have like a list of abilities that it gives it by default or something, right? Maybe. If not, I just have... Sure, that's how we get to it. Okay, so here we have all the attack montages. Maybe make them like a gray material, make it more metallic or glossy. Never use cell shader. I'm not entirely sure. Like he technically like he is metallic. If I turn off the like cell shading, it's a little bit more obvious. Like he does have his metallic map. Let's entirely functional and like working, right? Like he is metallic. It's just the way metallic reflections work kind of do weird stuff with cell shading. But we'll figure that out at some point. So, okay, we have these animations. So here we set his defense to 0. And then we actually like do the damaging in here. So we start attack. Enable trail, that's fine. Okay, so here we actually enable damage box. That's a pretty good place to do that. We're going to replace that obviously with the... Which one is it? Enemy damage sphere. Yeah. Okay, so what I want to do potentially, and this would require me to change some stuff. Or maybe I can make this work in a way that I can keep everything that I have already. I think maybe it can, yeah. Because we have this mesh component, and if we can get world scale for this, right? And assuming that this is scaled proportionally in the X, Y, and Z, we can just take one of them. Although I suppose we can just take the length of this as well. I'm just going to take the Z, I guess. I'll just make a bool. Scale to... mesh size. So for everybody else, this is going to just remain at false. But for any animations that we do from now on, we can set this to true. So that it doesn't mess up any of the stuff that we already did, because I don't really feel like redoing those. So we can scale to mesh size. If this is false, we just move on immediately. Let's see... We don't use this, we don't use this. Position delta. So I guess if this is true, we just Final delta. I don't know. We set the if it is false, we set the final delta to just be the position delta. Then we use the final delta here instead. But if this is true, we set the final delta to position delta multiplied by our scale, which should effectively make this work, I think. Meaning that we can get an accurate representation of what is going to like scale up and down like. The only thing is that we also need to then scale the radius. We actually don't even need to have a branch for this, I just realized. Yeah, and we don't need to have this final delta bullshit. We can do this in a much better way. Hold on. We can just do this with a select. We can just select this by bool. If this is false, we just use position delta. And if it is true, we use position delta multiplied by the scale. And then for this overlap sphere, we do the same thing. Except we do it with floats. So B and multiply by scale. Did you animate characters in Unreal 5 or other software? A little bit of a combination of the two. Some of them are animated in Blender. Some of them are animated in Unreal. I don't really need to print this string anymore. Most of them at this point are animated in Unreal. I did the last one I did, which is... Oh, that's my levels. Which is this one. Which still has normals on it, actually, so let's fix that as well immediately. No, it's not supposed to, I don't think. It's just something messed up with the material, I guess. I'll get back to... zombie body. There we go. This guy, I animated entirely in Blender, and that was kind of okay, but not great. So what I'm going to probably do going forward is I'm going to animate everything in Unreal, because I think the rigging process itself is a little bit more annoying in Unreal, but it's nice to have everything just like in engine. Because it also means that you have a rig immediately in case you want to do any like real-time IK, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, zombie body, I think it's this one. Is it that one? I don't think it's that one. I think it's the one below it. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So yeah. Okay, now it gets the radius and the offset entirely by like selecting stuff. So now going back into where did I put that animation thing? I might have messed that up. Hold on. There's an easy way to get back to that though. I still have the ability here, which has a reference to the montage, which I can just open up again. I think it might have opened up in a different window because of reasons. Okay, now I can set this to being exposed. There we go. Make sure that this scales by mesh size. And this should now be an accurate representation of what this looks like. It's just kind of annoying that it needs to stick around for a bit longer. Set this to 5 seconds. It doesn't move, sadly. It's just kind of the clunky way that I have this set up. But this is, I think, hold on. Let's try something like this. Oh, that's the wrong direction. Okay. But that might be due to the fact that this asset is rotated as well. Let's check that out. Because I think if I go to the... Why is the hips... The skeleton is weird, man. Rotation. Yeah, you see the rotation here is... What the fuck? Okay. I guess we'll just... I guess we'll just assume that we don't have to assume anything, actually, I don't think. Because we can just check this guy's rotation. It's probably rotated around the z-axis 90 degrees. Yeah. So his default is this. It's minus 90 degrees, so I guess... maybe that's also a thing that we should do. Make it just work in whatever direction he's facing. So instead of get the actor rotation, maybe what we should do is we should get the world rotation of the mesh. I'm going to have to make sure that this doesn't break all the other stuff that we've already set up. So before we get like too far into this, we probably should check that. So yeah, let's just... Like this is... Yeah, it should be a little bit bigger though. Like 200. And then 150 forward. Oh, that's not what needed to do at all. Ooh, that's a bit... That might be a bit too big. Well... What if we set this to back to 100 and then we... I hate that it does that. Like, why does it do that when I select the top of, like, that panel over there? That seems like a bug. Yeah, and then we do 200. And we need to make sure that it only does this when the hand actually like matches that location. So I would say even a little bit later. And I think a little bit more forward than heard. I can't see a sword right now, so I got to keep that in mind. Let's do 150. I think that's pretty good. So before we do anything else, I'm going to go through and I'm going to mute this real quick. I'm going to have to check whether or not the stuff is messed up now. I'm just adding... Yeah, so that's all messed up now. So that might be an issue. But I think that is only an issue because of the way I set up those animations. So we might... I don't know what we're going to do, man. Having fun? I mean, I hope so. That we're going to be having fun. What we're doing right now is setting up the... Gotta watch this fucking cutscene again. What we're doing right now is setting up all the stuff to have the damage animations or the attack animations for the enemies working properly. because I can never be satisfied with something I made. It's really what that comes down to. Just found out that they added the Unreal 3 control click parameter thing back in Unreal 5. There was no patch note. That's been in there for a while. I don't know if they removed it in Unreal 4 necessarily, but that's been in there like for a hot minute. I just need him to... Oh, hold on. He won't do that attack unless he is at a certain like defense percentage. I only found out about that like... I think when I was using... Okay, so that actually does seem to... Okay, but that's weird because now that is like unnecessarily big. Huh. Yeah, I don't think I've ever used it in Unreal 4. I only found out that that was a thing like in Unreal 5.2 or something. So it makes sense if it wasn't in 4. So yeah, the scaling thing doesn't really work that well, does it? I wonder why it doesn't, because it should. Like scale to mesh size, we either pick the position delta and the scale delta. Oh, I guess it always uses the same radius. Okay, so maybe it's just a visual issue. But I do think that it is actually properly like scaling and positioning it based on the mesh's rotation now. Which means that it also takes into account the local rotation we give it within the blueprint, because it wasn't doing that before. Still probably should just export my stuff facing forward the right way instead of facing in the y direction, but and if we're going to be changing all those other animations anyway, that seems like it's a little too high up, not gonna lie. But aside from that, that looked pretty good. Why was that so high up? Because if I like look at it here, and it should multiply the position delta by the scale, which also should multiply the z component. So that's a little weird. Anyway, let's do the rest of his animations and just figure. I think we could just like filter on the word attack. And I think we can pretty much use the same settings for most of them. So we damage on like roughly this frame, I would say. Right. That seems about right. This one probably could do with being a teeny bit higher. But yeah, no, the like just control clicking for copying and pasting, that is like just the way that I do things now, because it is really convenient. I really like it. It's probably pretty good. And this one I think is just another copy paste. Most of the damage boxes end up kind of just being in the same place anyway. Just gotta get the timing for it right. I think like roughly this makes sense. Wait for it to disappear. That's pretty good. And then for the teleporting attacks, I guess we do it right around here. So damage box. I guess we also got rid of the disable damage box, actually, because obviously we don't use that anymore either. So yeah, damage box only like applies during a single frame now, which makes it a little bit more user-friendly, like player-friendly. And a little bit more consistent as well, because we had the issue where if you are playing on a higher frame rate, it just has physically more frames to do the checks on, meaning that there's a higher chance that you get hit when you have better hardware. At which point, you would need, like, from like a speedrunner perspective almost, or like a very like high competitive perspective, which this is not the type of game for competitive play, but at that point you are better off like increasing your graphic settings to decrease your FPS, because it makes it easier to dodge, which I don't think we want. So just like narrowing it all down to on this frame it happens is probably the best way to do it. It's unlikely to make an actual difference, I will say as well. So I don't know if this is like worth really spending any time on. But we have now, so we're going to be watching that intro cutscene for this fight just so many times. I also need to fix the cursor thing when you load a game. When the load screen disappears, it should disable your cursor input. Or to disable the cursor visibility, rather. Also, this guy didn't have boss fight music, did he? I don't know that I care about that, though. Let's see. Yeah, they're up higher. Why are they up higher? I don't know why they're up that high. Is it because... Is it because the actor location is... Yeah, the actor location is in the middle. The actor location should be at the bottom. I think that's the issue. Huh. Add skip cinematic button. I have something built in where if you see a cinematic for the second time, like if you die and you go back in, it flips a ball, so that it just skips the cinematic altogether. So I probably should just like manually flip that ball through like a hotkey or something for testing purposes. But for now, it's not annoying enough for me to have to want to deal with that. So yeah, it I think uses the get owner, get actor location, and the get actor location for this fucker is the middle of his body. But no, that should still be the... I guess for the... I guess get actor location fails. So what we should do is we should get world location on this. Because get owner fails in the preview. Because it doesn't have an owner, it's just a mesh. So if we do this instead, it should now be consistent. Because the mesh position will be the same, surely. I guess we'll see. No. That's still... So the mesh location itself has its pivot point at the feet. Oh, fantastic. It does. Test if the location is from the actor location, split a vector into positive and negative. I don't think that's the issue though. Like this is... Oh, hold on. No, the issue is not that it was... No, this should work. Because the issue wasn't that it was displaying wrong here. The issue is that it was doing the wrong thing in game. Because then it suddenly had an actor component. Or like an actor owner. So now that we have this fixed, it should now be consistent between the preview and the world. Like that is the issue that we were having. So actually just jumped to the conclusion that my stuff didn't work too quickly. Yeah, but the offset wouldn't be consistent for every actor, so I wouldn't. I need to. Yeah, you see now it actually is like properly working for everything. I would have to give it an offset per actor, and that would be tedious. And I don't really want to do that. I don't have a dash button. That makes this boss fight a bit more tricky. But yeah, so this boss fight works now. And since we need to redo all the other enemies anyway, because fuck me, I guess. We might as well just make them always scale like this. So we don't need to do the selecting stuff anymore. We just always pick this one. And we just always pick this one. Hold on, didn't mean to delete that one. And that's it. Is there a node that checks if you're like in gameplay or whatever? Like, is there an in editor node so that I only like draw the debug lines in editor? Unreal check if in editor or something like that. Because definitely, like, there is a C++ macro for that. At least for the builds. Is package for distribution. That's actually a neat way to do it, but that's still not what I want to do. I think I had something like that before. Yeah, so we have debug build, development build, shipping build with editor. I think it's with editor. With editor. Editor is editor. Oh, that's for GLS actually. That's not exactly what I'm looking for right now. I saw a pure function. I think I remember it being a pure function. That's what I'm looking for. Just gonna ask ChatGPT if it knows something. Because this is gonna bother me otherwise. In Unreal Engine using Blueprint, is there any way for me to check if I am running code during gameplay or in the editor? I need to only draw some debug spheres in editor. I don't want those to show up in gameplay. Is editor. Yeah. So we have is editor. I mean, GLS has that, I guess. But I thought Unreal also had its own version of that. Let's just do this. No context sensitivity. I guess we just check it with this. Okay, if this works, it works. I guess we don't need to do the for each loop in the editor either for the overlaps. We don't even need to do the sphere overlap itself in the editor, actually. That's... yeah. If we're in the editor, we only need to do the print. So if we're in the editor, we print or we debug sphere, and otherwise we do like the actual overlap. From what I remember, debugging tools that are marked development only don't get packaged. It's not the issue that this would get packaged. Like if you do debug, if you do a shipping build, so not a development or a debug build, this won't show up in game. I also just don't want it to show up during gameplay in the editor itself. And I know that there's a way to do that because I did it before. I just forgot what it is. But I think this might be it. Oh, you should be checking for is game world. I think that's the way that I did it before. Yeah, so I don't think this is gonna work. Oh, also, I still have control over my character during the cutscene. Not supposed to have that. Yeah, so this is probably still going to... yeah. So is game world? No, that just doesn't exist. I could have sworn that this is a thing you can do. Unreal blueprints, check if in game. Oh, I think the way I did it before actually was get game instance. And we check if that is valid because not too context sensitive. Because if that's the way I did it, I think. Yeah. So if this is valid, we are in game. But if we are just in the editor, we don't have a game instance. Target is widget? What the fuck? I think that's the hacky way that I did it before. So we won't have a game instance now, so it does the debug draw, but when we have a game instance, it won't. Isn't that just the weirdest way to go about doing this? But I think it'll work, because now we'll have a game instance. And I probably can make something to like toggle those things off and on like a global level as well if I wanted to, but yeah. So now it shouldn't, yeah, now, so in game, it doesn't draw them, even when I'm like in the editor. But in here, it does draw them. So that is actually what I wanted. And I can always go back in here real quick and just I guess what I can do is I can just like kind of connect it up like this, and I'm back like this. Like just doing it quickly like that, that's fine. Or actually connecting it up like this. For now, I don't really care. Let's do all the other animations that we already did before, but now more properly. So I guess we just like do everything based on animation montages. Right? Yeah, I think we do. So we just check animation montage. I don't think I have a filter for montages yet, do I? Animation should be in here somewhere. Montage. And we just check everything. That's a lot. I know. It's going to be fun. Yeah, so you see this guy is going kind of the wrong direction because he's going in the X direction, which should be the forward direction, but I suck, so it's not the forward direction. Let's make that like 200 instead. Great. I think he only has like 2 attacks, so this is going to be super easy. We have the revenge attack as well, where he just rotate this around. So again, 200. Fantastic. That's the demon fixed up as well. Next up, I guess these don't really... the things that do projectiles, we don't need to worry about. That's actually kind of nice. So these flying golems, they just will work, I think. The ghosts has a bunch of animations that I need to take care of. Why are you invisible? Oh, is it because this is set to a weird value? No. Right? It's probably something to do with this material. I think the ghost might not be working at all. Did I set it up in the montage for this one? Apparently I did. I guess we need to figure this out. What the hell's... Okay, so you do work in here. You do show up in here. It's just in the animations that you... Fuck off. It's just in the animations that you're weird. Hello? Please? Oh, I definitely also want this to be... I think I fucked something up. What's going wrong? What's going wrong with all this? Oh, I saw a thing for like a split second. Oh, is it just tiny? Is he just tiny? He's tiny and below the ground. Oh, hello. The fuck is wrong with you? I guess that is the... I think this is the mesh that ended up being ginormous. Or very tiny, actually, when I imported it. So I need to make it ginormous. Still doesn't explain why he's underground. So that is slightly worrying. But I think if I go to this guy and I go to the mesh... Yeah, I needed to like scale it up by a factor of 9. So originally it is about this size when I imported it. So that is, that seems accurate. Yeah, it's a chibi enemy. It kind of is. Yeah, kind of, really. Enemy damage sphere, but this is... This should be... What the fuck? Okay, so this is going to be absolutely fucking tiny, isn't it? Because, yeah. Let's set this back to 0, 0, 0, and this to like fucking 5? Well, no, it's about 1/10. So let's set this to like 12. Yeah, that seems about right, actually. So if we do this like forward 2 units. It's really difficult to actually get this right. Like forward 10 units. Come on, disappear. Maybe 15. That seems about decent. I think we can do with being a little smaller though. And then like 2, maybe 5. That's probably pretty good. And the wonderful thing is, yeah, the other side can just use the exact same trigger because it is the same location, effectively. And then the revenge hit, I think, yeah, also can just use the same location. And it didn't have one yet, or does it do it in here? Oh, that one just didn't work yet. Okay, well, now it will. Right at that frame. I also don't think we need to do reset revenge attack anymore, but I'm gonna pretend like we do. Yeah, so now this guy should work as well. So we can go through this relatively quickly, I think. I'll leave the Reaper for when we actually get to that bit. I will do this Reaper right away, though. Okay. Let's do this about 150 and a radius like 200, because it's a pretty big boy. Oh, it needs to be forward a lot more, like 300 units. And maybe even a little more. And then the radius at 250. And then up like 200. Seems pretty good. Asset browser, let's go for the... Oh, hold on, we don't need to do anything. Just replace this one. All better. And then the... we have the revenge attack and we have the appear attack, which are 2 different things. Turn on life damage. I guess this one has 2 swipes. So we do like 1 here. And then 1 here. It's mostly for show, because if you get hit by the first one, you're going to be knocked back by the time he does the second one. And if you don't get hit by the first one, you're definitely not going to get hit by the second one either. Right? So I don't think that second swipe actually does anything now that I think about it. Well, that goes down back to the thing that I said in the devlog for this week as well, is implication is so much more important than like actual mechanics. This feels more dangerous, even if it technically, like, that second swipe doesn't do anything. I bet you I could just not have a collision check on that second swipe and nobody would ever notice. I'm not going to remove it, because why would I? But that's an interesting like thing to think of. Remove all these. It does kind of clean up all the animations though. That's kind of nice. And that's, yeah, exactly the same location as well. Okay, so that's another enemy done. These guys are projectile based. This guy is projectile based. This guy is not. But I think this is the last one I have to do. So for this one, we just... yeah, I think we just take this and put it over there. And we do it a little bit later maybe as well. I'm gonna set this back to only being like a second in duration, because they stay around a little too long. Might even for like debugging purposes, because making them stay around longer doesn't actually do anything, right? So just make them half a second. Does enemy apply damage on regular collision? So what it does is when it receives this notify, it does a sphere overlap with like an offset in its like local offset rotation forward, whatever, with a certain radius, which is now all getting scaled based on the mesh's actual size, which is nice. And then it goes over all the actors that it hit with that overlap, which is only going to include pawns. So it's only like checking object type pawn. And then it's going to check like a comparison to the tags. So it's going to compare with exclusive or enemy tag on itself and the thing that it just hit. So only when an enemy hits a non-enemy or a non-enemy hits an enemy, does it actually go through and send a gameplay event to the actor that will trigger the damage from like the gameplay ability itself. And this tagging system is, frankly, the most straightforward and easy way that I could very quickly put together like a alliance system. No, the enemy collision itself doesn't apply damage. It only applies damage during the instant that it runs this notify on the animation. So just running into an enemy doesn't damage you. There you are. That's the dive down animation. This is revenge attack, which is huge. Guess we just take this and put it over there, and that's kind of it, right? Oh. We do need to zero that out. That's pretty good. Don't need to do anything with that. This, yeah, we also adjust, like, make this 0, make that 100. Now for this one as well, make this 0. Why would that be different? Let's make it 100 as well. And I think with that, all of our enemies are now back up to date. So let's, for testing purposes again, route this through here again. Just to see whether or not everything just actually works in the world as well. It should, but you never know. Do I have my... No, I need to hook up DS4 Windows. We're dropping a couple of frames, but it should be fine. Okay, you... Oh, that's actually quite tiny. That's kind of weird. It's kind of... I mean, it's kind of fine. But that's smaller than I expected it would be. So maybe we need to look into that. Then again, it does seem to like work fairly well. So maybe it's not that big a deal. Aside from the fact that I like very much do want to make sure that what I see in editor is representative of how it's going to like scale up in game. Okay, so you could per se add pushback collisions as an enemy that is bulky strong, can push the player just by walking at them. Yeah, I could. Like in the end, I can just enable physics on them, which will allow you to push them around. Or make something that... Actually, I think that it should be just that easy. But I could also, like, on-hit event, like, add some velocity or whatever. I'll think about that later, because that's the thing that I have been thinking about, like, should enemies be moved? Okay, so for you, it just does not work. Why are you different like that? Ghost. Did I not do the ghost? I might have just not done the ghost. No, I did do the ghost. What's wrong with the ghost? Also, now that we're in here... Oh no, that is about right, I think. That seems about right. I say to make myself feel better. Yeah, ghost animation, left hits. Oh no, I just set this up wrong. Wait, what? I guess... Yeah, I did set it up wrong, but for some reason here the forward vector is the X. It's all kind of weird, man. I just don't want to have to deal with these enemies anymore. But I guess that also means that the revenge hit needs to be swapped around. Oh, that's sorry for the flashbang. Sorry, that's the wrong file. I needed to open up a folder so I can hook up my controller. Hold on. Also, did my download finish on my Steam Deck? It seems to have, because my Steam Deck's just like fucking shut down seemingly. Okay, that's fine with me. Okay, that works. Now that I have a controller, I can more easily like murder things with magic, because magic. Because we don't need to test these guys anymore, we need to test these guys. Do you work now? You work properly now. That's fantastic. So I guess that means we murder you as well. Which I think those are the only guys around here that I can test. So, yeah, because none of these have physical attacks anyway. Why will you not let me attack? What? My attack doesn't work anymore. What the fuck? It's just the input binding, apparently. Okay, that's something to look into as well. But yeah, all that seems to work. And before we can test the rest, we need to set up the level doors for them. But before we get to any of that, what the hell? Attack. Face button bottom. Oh, did I change that to being triggered? I think I changed that to only work on triggered. Attack. Oh, that's the game mode. Hold on. I'll just actually put my code over here. Attacking. No, that's definitely unstarted. Now, what the hell is going wrong? By the way, does your enemy have lunge as if they lunge at player mid-combat to close in? No. Maybe I'll make that like a mechanic with specific enemies, but as a whole, they don't. So why is it doing that? That's kind of weird. Do we have the attack input action anywhere in here? I think we do. Input action warp. Could have sworn we had this. Maybe just input action attack. And we'll get brought to it. Oh, okay, sure. When started, we'll just print Let's see. It's not triggering the input action at all. Oh, now it is. Oh, it's an input mode thing. It's an input mode thing. That makes sense. So, oh, because no, maybe there's a widget that's using up that input and consuming it. Yeah, I think that's the issue. But we needed to fix that anyway. So let's do the load menu. It's an input action from move. Sure, but when we bind, I guess on load game, we do all that, and somewhere in here, I think we need to set the input mode back to being game only. I guess we do this after we make sure that the save file is loaded, right? Actually, I guess we do this only afterwards as well. Shouldn't we, like, on load game do this first before anything else anyway? I think we should. Hold on. Let's move some of this stuff around, because I think we don't want to do any of this until we are sure that the thing that we're pressing actually properly loaded the save file. I don't know if this is going to break stuff, but I assume that it doesn't. Okay. Input game only, please. Flush input, sure. I don't think it's going to matter. And then set cursor to false. I think that's going to take care of both of our issues. We're going to ignore all those things now. Oh. Yeah, so this is, no. This is open load menu, so there's only on save. So why does this now not do what it need to do? I guess the inventory save, no? Let's just see if it is this. I think we had this existing like somewhere over here before, which is still weird, but if that's the way it works, that's the way it'll work. I mean, that works, and okay, sure. I don't know my own code anymore, okay? This whole system is a mess. It's a functional mess though, so I'm not gonna like bitch around with it. It's a functional mess that, on like a moment-to-moment like game design basis, it actually works fantastically. It's just a little bit messy to dive back in and make changes to. Okay, that means that we have everything under control here, and we can move on to setting up some more doors. Aren't we excited to set up some more doors? We like doors. I like doors. This is part of the persistent world. Is this all part of persistent world? Oh, this is all part of persistent world. That's right. I don't know why. There's really no need for this to be in the persistent world, but sure. That's what you want to do. Let's just re-enable the central hub, which doesn't have anything in it. Oh, we can just make it current like this. That's kind of nice. I didn't know that that was a thing. We put in a lot of doors. So BP door. What the fuck do you mean that doesn't exist? Oh, it's BP level door. So I think the doors in here were about like triple the size-ish. And I'm going to not have them snap to a rotation. We'll set up the colors for them eventually. Maybe they were like 2.5 times the size. That seems more correct. I do believe these are also, yeah, supposed to have some blocking volumes in them. Because you're not supposed to / allowed to / able to use most of them as of this moment, because most of the dungeons that are hidden behind them don't yet exist, because I have not made them. It's kind of difficult to enter a room that doesn't exist. We'll worry about setting them all up like super exactly later. For now, I just want everything to more or less function again. So I can start placing down a door in the actual dungeon that I made. And then we'll have a playable game again. Sort of. Sort of. Not quite. But close enough. Rotate these around. How's everybody doing? I haven't asked you guys yet. How rude of me. Everybody going like along well with their own projects? People lost the will to live yet? Because, you know, game development do be like that. I don't even know why this thing has a nav mesh in here. Does it? Oh, there's a nav mesh from a neighboring level that's just kind of sticking into here because nav mesh is so weird. That makes sense. You know what? I'm gonna call this as good enough. So now we just copy color from here, paste color into there. Holy shit, that's bright! That's a little too bright, man. That's a little too bright. Bring it down a bit, okay? Bring it down a little bit, please. And make it a little bit more blue. Okay, so we're just going to manually pick the colors, because copying them over is maybe not great. But that's fine. This is supposed to be red. Maybe just do that. Then this one is yellow. Make it fully saturated, because why not? If green. And you might notice, hey, they're all on the color wheel, so the next one's actually going to be cyan. Yes, it is. That's very much on purpose that they are put in the order of a color wheel. Number one, because that makes the like emissive color bleed over nicely from one to the other. But all the dungeons are like going to be designed based on a color wheel. So we have the purple dungeon going into a red dungeon, going into the yellow dungeon. Maybe you should have an orange in between there, into the green, into the light blue, like the cyan, into the blue. That said, though, there's very little room for a blue dungeon right here, so there might be some stuff where it's like technically overlapping, but hey. That's game development for you. We just lie to the player until we feel good about ourselves. Now we can go back in and start setting up these things, though. So we set this to, I think that would be 1, 1, 1, 0. I think it's 1, 0. No, it's 1, 1. One of these. Opening room. There we go. And we're off. We're going to do like a lot more stuff. So 1, 1 opening room. That's the one that we're going to be going to next, which we can just go to by pressing enter. We can. That's such a good find. I didn't know that was a thing. Very glad that I found out about that. I guess this one is just going to be white. There's a lot of jokes to make by saying that, I realize. I don't know why I'm being so exact with the door placement. They're all going to get mixed up when I actually put in the art assets anyway, so it doesn't really matter that much. So this is fine. So this will lead back to the central hub. Then we have... Like, technically, I mean, I put a door over here, but doesn't it kind of make more sense to put the door all the way over there? I feel like it does. So let's do that. We can move. Why is this skull lower than the rest? There we go. So yeah, let's put this door. If we're going to be putting down all the doors again anyway, we might as well reevaluate all of them to a certain extent. And I really should just make that widget that makes things snap to the nearest wall, because if I'm going to be placing down a lot of doors, just making that real quick is probably going to be faster. But you know, at least to 1, 3. Here we are, not doing that. We do have just somewhere in here, like surface snapping. Does that work somewhat well? Not really. I mean, the positioning snaps properly to the surface. That's the thing that, at least... The rotation is supposed to rotate to the surface normal as well, but it's just not doing that. So I don't know what's up with that. It's fine for now. We'll just do this manually. Assumedly this is 1, 2. That's 1, 2. And this is now accessible. Congratulations, me. We've done it. I think this is actually jumpable. So this part might be kind of unnecessary, but who cares? 1, 3. Let's go in. This one leads back to 1, 1. So let's set it up immediately. Also, before I forget, this is going to be the only one that's annoying to get to. Because 1, 1 is at the bottom of all the teens as well. I need to set up the colors for all these. Because all these doors are supposed to have purple lights. So let's go back and do that in a moment. Just copy this light color. And then this one can remain white, but this one and this one are supposed to be purple. This won't be as over-the-top purple when the walls themselves aren't purple. Well, the walls themselves might actually... I'm not entirely sure yet if I'm going to be making the walls purple in this dungeon. I think I want to have all the dungeons like very clearly color themed, but I feel like I want to do it more with lighting than I do with like actual art asset colors. I think I want to have the actual art itself just be kind of more agnostic. That way I can also more easily reuse assets across the entire game, which is nice. And just have the general like vibe and the dominant color of each dungeon be done mostly through lighting. That's the way I feel right now anyway. But we'll maybe change that in the future, I don't know. But that leads us to this hallway, which can just skip over all the way. Also, hello, Wayne Games? I'm going to say Wayne Games. Because it makes me sound less like a jackass. It's really annoying that it's rebuilding in half mesh when I rotate this thing around. How's your day today? Mine is a little tedious, but we're making good progress. Correct. That's good. I made a good guess. That's in 1.4. Placing these doors down is tedious at the best of times, but having to do them all back to back is actually kind of nightmarish, not gonna lie. I mean, that's why I live stream this kind of stuff, so you guys can share in my pain and misery. When I say sharing my pain and misery, it seems like you guys generally enjoy it when I am suffering, so at least it's good content. Trying to figure out how I broke my code while refactoring, and that's just a fact of life. I mean, at least you broke your code yourself. My code just, well, it's not even my code broke. My levels just broke one day when I changed like one thing. Like I added a couple of lights to the doors, and then all my doors and my entire game disappeared. Which, that was fun. But yeah, refactoring, messing things up is always a good time. And with a good time, I mean a good time to contemplate whether or not your life is worth living. Because for me, usually those are the times where I'm like, maybe it's not. Maybe I should just like curl up into a little ball of sadness and turn off my PC. But then I get obsessed by trying to solve the issue, and then I do something equally as unhealthy, and that is like stay up until 3 AM trying to diagnose a problem. It's comforting to see other people struggle too. I mean, why are these two different levels with 1.6 in the name? That could be dangerous. Do I even have the other 1.6 in here still? No. Probably should just remove that level altogether then. But you know, just live streaming and hanging out makes it a little bit more bearable to... Hold on. 1.6 combat trial. To fix the issues. I can relate. Yeah, I mean, if you haven't had any issues where you're like, I just want to like, I'm just gonna go like back to school and study to be like a florist or something like that. I'm gonna give up on programming altogether. You either are a genius or just more resilient than me emotionally, which is like the most likely option. Or you haven't been doing this for very long. But I feel like the most likely option is just being more resilient than me emotionally, because I don't know. I'm not that emotional of a dude. I mean, I get annoyed when stuff doesn't work, obviously. Did I? Like this. Now I don't know if it copied over that door and placed it in a weird place. Because I think it didn't. But yeah, when my version control, what the fuck? Oh, yeah, we have, yeah, okay. You know, that's kind of fair enough. That's on me. When my version control broke and I was afraid that I lost like 2 weeks of work, I was legitimately like actually angry. Not just like mildly annoyed or like amusingly like over the top, hey, look at me being a YouTuber, upset. I was legitimately furious. But like that's the strongest emotional reaction I've had to something going wrong with like a work thing in a while. Well, that and clients being clients, of course, but that's just a thing that you have to deal with when you work freelance like me. And for the most part, the people that I work with are actually kind of like pretty good. So it's like all things considered, I feel like I have a pretty good like deal on life. That's leading into 1-7. That's not what I want to do at all. I mean, it could be better. It could be. Why is there no things going in this direction? I mean, I would very much prefer to be able to like do development on YouTube full time, but can't have it all. I think this is. Let's just actually be smart about this. Rotate this around by 180, and that way we know that it's exactly on the opposite side. Can I disable rebuilding of the nav mesh while I like work on level design? Just make like manually rebuild at the end. Probably should look into that. 1.5 balcony. At least you seem to be working in game dev outside of YouTube in your game. No, about outside of YouTube and my game, I'm a video editor. Like my background is in film, not in game development. Sadly. Well, how the fuck does this line up again? I think it's supposed to be, yeah, I think there's supposed to be a door right over here. So let's put this door. I think, yeah, it's this right here. Frankly, I don't even think that I would like very much enjoy working in game development if I had to like work at a studio. But maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I would enjoy it. But that's not necessarily to do with like the specific given studio or anything. I just very much like being my own boss. Because otherwise, why the hell would I choose to live on freelance basis? Because it kind of sucks, not gonna lie. Okay, let's not forget to set this up as 1.6. Oh, I'm in the wrong level context. Fuck. We can fix that, we can fix that, we can fix that. This leads to the... No, this is the... Oh, it is actually the balcony, isn't it? Yeah. I just renamed it. Didn't rename it to maze. This used to be just a smaller room with only like a balcony in it. Obviously, some things drastically changed. I don't know where the door that I'm going to place here is supposed to lead. But I do know it's going to be leading to the red dungeon, so I'll just put it in there. But yeah, so I do freelance video editing as my day job. Which is not much of a day job. Sometimes it's a night job. It's a whenever the fuck I want to do it and have time for it job. Because as long as I like reach deadlines, usually that's fine. There's sometimes a bit of an issue with... I don't know if this is a like common thing with people who work freelance, because I don't hear a lot of people complaining about it. Maybe just because I specifically work for like YouTube editing. But I get this thing, right, where sometimes I have very little work for like 2 months in a row, and then I start looking at my bank account like, oh man, this is like not a, like this is not good. Like I can see numbers going down. Please, universe, give me something to do. And then like 80% of my clients all contact me within a week with like massive jobs to do. And suddenly I am working like 50 to 60 hours a week for like a month straight. And then I have another dry spell of like a month. They can't just go in turns. They all like either don't have anything for me, or they all have something for me to do at the same time. At the end of the day, like on a whole year basis, that balances out. So like financially, that's fine. Just I would very much prefer if I could just like have some more like consistency in that, so that I don't work myself half to death one half of the time, and don't stress about having no money the other half of the time. So I feel like that's just kind of what being a freelancer is like, though, which is why I say it kind of sucks, because you're either overworked or overstressed. There's not a lot of middle ground there. I need to look into my map to see, I think, where this leads, unless... No, I think I can just... Hold on, if I turn on my red dungeon, which is somewhere the fuck over here, I think it's supposed to lead over into this level, which is 212 Central. Is it, actually? I think it is, yeah. I hereby declare that this reaches 212. Okay, that's cool. And then I think the thing is supposed to start here. I'm deploying as a marketing. I work in government as a tech advisor. I mean, sometimes governments can use a little bit more marketing, so maybe like your insight is actually quite valuable there. Biggest income for me last year was a Unreal Engine tech director. Was a CEO of a tech company. That is... Sometimes life is just wild like that, right? Sometimes life just is fucking crazy. And indie game, dev when I have the time. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah, I got similar as a freelance game dev. I don't know. For me specifically, I kind of feel like right now like this week, I'm kind of not as crazily busy, luckily. But the past like 2 weeks, I have been pretty busy, and I feel like over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be pretty busy, because the last 2 months of the year are very profitable for like YouTubers, because you have like a bunch of sponsorship opportunities for like Black Friday usually coming up, and then general like advertising prices are just high in December because you're working up to the holidays. So every YouTuber under the sun produces more content in November and December. And since I am both a YouTuber and work for other YouTubers, that's not a great combination. Because it means that I make myself busy with like YouTube work, and then my clients make me busy with their YouTube work. But it also does mean that I like am like very like involved in YouTube like all day every day, so I kind of like know what I'm doing. I just half the time don't have the time to do things properly. It's the other side of that coin. Like the amount of times that I just slap together a thumbnail instead of like sitting down and thinking about things a little bit is kind of insane. Like my title and thumbnail game could definitely be better. But I also don't want to be too clickbaity. I'm kind of annoyed by the fact that the couple of videos that I have that are fairly clickbaity all do very well. But I don't want to do like that too much because I hate that. But, you know, if it works, it works. And if it like pays the bills, sometimes you just kind of got to do it. And it's not even just like I want to be like getting them YouTube dollars, right? I mean, I do, don't get me wrong. But it's also, I kind of feel like if I can trick people into clicking on a video that they will learn something from, I don't feel like super bad about it. If that makes any sense. Like if I gotta trick people into learning, I kind of think I'm fine with that for the most part. Because I have a couple of videos like, you're doing this wrong, or don't do this instead. Which is just like very screamy thumbnail stuff. And I legitimately, when I see that in my feed, I don't click on it. Because it annoys me because I know that it is like a call to your emotions. Which just works. But it's a tricky balance between like finding something where I'm like, yeah, I still think that this is like ethical and not like too heavily manipulative for the people watching it, or the people seeing it rather, and hopefully watching it, but also like still providing the proper value. I'm an enterprise architect. I need to create content in Unity. Oh, the horrors! Unity. It's not that bad. It's actually a fun engine to use. For YouTube and myself, hard to balance work, family, YouTube, game dev. Yeah, so that whole family thing, that's where I just like, oh yeah, that's also a thing you have to balance in, don't you? I do quite badly with like family and friends oftentimes. In my defense, most people in like my general like immediate vicinity have similar like mindsets and like lives going on, so they also don't have a lot of time for that. Well, I quite enjoy your videos, to be honest. I do have a course on Udemy about Unreal. Not gonna promote it here or anything. Would be stupid. I mean, I don't think YouTube channel have links, so like that wouldn't work. But I think your videos are better quality. I mean, what the fuck is going on with these things? Holy shit! Oh, that's just a different level cutting through. As I said, like my background is in video and filmmaking, so like, I do kind of pride myself on having like good quality video content, and I try to also have good quality like information in those videos, obviously. But I'm also always happy to hear that other people like actually agree with that and think about that the same way. Because you always hate the stuff that you make, right? Like okay, not always, but most people, it takes some practice, let's say, to get used to learning to like appreciate the things that you make yourself. But generally speaking, what I find with creative people, or people that make creative things, those are two different things. A lot of people that like make stuff oftentimes will go through this like up and down, like this, almost like this sine wave of, while working on it, starting out loving it, and then as they've worked on it for some time, they start to hate it to, that's not the level that should go to. They start to hate it like really badly while still working on it. Then when they finish it, they absolutely hate it. They're like, I wasted like fucking 15 years of my life on this, even though it was only 2 months of work. Then there's a period where they just avoid looking in the direction of the thing that they made to begin with. Then there is a window where they're like, actually, that was pretty good. Like a year after they finish making it or something. It kind of depends on how long the development process was. But let's say about a year after they finish it, like, actually, that was pretty good. In retrospect, I didn't suck that much. And then when they're like a couple of years more down the line, they start looking back like, yeah, it was good for the time, but it is actually like, it doesn't hold up to the work that I make now. But when they say the work that I make now, that is referring to the work that they finished a year ago, not the work that they're currently in the process of making, because that they actively hate in that moment. Does that make sense? That is kind of how I feel most people in like any sort of art go through a almost grieving process on the things that they create. And like, as a creator, the sooner you, like, if you identify with this, like, you're holy shit, he's entirely right, you might be a person that doesn't go through this. Like, I've also seen people that just always hate their stuff or always love their stuff. If you fall into the latter category, there is a real chance that your stuff actually does suck because you have no sense for self-reflection. Or you're just actually amazing. That is a possibility, but statistically speaking, there's a bigger chance that you just, like, your stuff sucks because you don't reflect on it. It's kind of, like, rough to say and to hear, but, like, sometimes it needs to be said. But if that sounds like you, like, you start off loving things and then you hate them, like, that entire, like, process, just being aware of that cycle and knowing that that is a thing, for me, it helps when I am like, oh, everything I make sucks. Because I've been working on this project for like 2.5 years now, with its ups and downs and a lot of redos, and I switched engines and all that kind of stuff, but that's the only reason that I can hold on, because I know of this cycle. I know that this cycle happens, and I know that once this is completed, and I look back on it like a year or two later, I'm going to be super happy with it. I hate my voice more than anything. That also is, that is a fairly, like, common, everything leads to the proper level, right? I'll finish that thought in a moment. That is a fairly common thing for people in general, to not like their own voice, because your voice, like, listening back to it sounds different from the one that from your actual voice. Or the voice that you hear in your own head, rather. Because the voice that you hear in your own head has, like, different reverb through your skull and that kind of stuff. So you're very used to how your own voice sounds to you. But the way that it sounds on recording is how it sounds to other people. Which might be discouraging if you don't like it, but you don't like it because you're used to the way it sounds to yourself. If you get used to this, and listen to your voice a lot, number one, psychologically, the difference is gonna, like, get smaller to begin with. But you also just kind of get used to the way it sounds on a microphone. but it'll also start sounding more similar in my experience. As a creator, you see all the flaws in something. This is the what me and my friends refer to as the like bubble plastic fallacy. I don't know who it was. At some point, some film director in a behind the scenes says, yeah, we made this amazing like long take shot, like this one take that is like 2 minutes long without cutting, recorded entirely like in camera with all like these practical effects, and people fucking love that one take. But as the director, I can only see at one moment in the take that we went with in the final film, there's like a roll of like bubble wrapping plastic off to the side, just on screen, just in frame. I cannot see this shot without like noticing that. Nobody else will have noticed that if I didn't just point it out. But because I know it and because I made it and I'm like about 10 times as critical about my work as like even the critics would be, that shot is now just forever ruined for me as a director. I don't remember who it was that said that, but that was like, that's an anecdote that we, like me and my friends use quite a lot. We're like, oh no, this sucks. And then we're like, hold on, does this suck? Or is this bubble plastic? Because a lot of the time when we feel like something sucks, it's just bubble plastic. When I 2x my video, my voice sounds the way it does in my head. That is interesting. I've never actually like considered that. Huh. Like at this point, personally, I am so used to the way it sounds just like in a microphone for my own voice, that I'm kind of okay with it. But that took a long time. I hated working on my own voice for a long time. Again, as does effectively everybody that I know. I hated on the 3D model that I made, but then looked at it half a year later and thought, actually, that's kind of exactly that is an experience that I think most creative people share, something like that. And I think as a creator, it is important to recognize that that is a thing that happens to keep yourself from like getting super discouraged. But also to keep yourself from like being overconfident, because there might also be times where you like start at something, you're like, oh, I am so totally the shit. I can do literally anything I want. And then keep in mind all the times that you felt like shit about the project that you were just doing and try to like tone it down just a little bit, maybe. Because the spectrum between hating yourself and being like overly arrogant about yourself, and landing in the middle of that is quite difficult. It's very easy to fall onto one of the two sides, and neither side is productive. If you like fall onto it too much, I think you need both sides to a certain extent to be a creative person, but you need them in balance. I must say, just like doing tedious stuff that only requires half my brain is actually quite nice for like just having these kinds of like chats on screen. Usually I'm too busy like programming to like talk about this kind of stuff. Actually, I'm quite enjoying just hanging out and talking about this. I've also, maybe this is actually also just like, if we're onto this anyway, right? Let's just like do a little bit of like brainstorming that I usually do on my own. I've been thinking about making a video, not really like a devlog or anything, but it would probably take the slot of like a devlog video, which I do once a month. Usually the first Monday of the month. I've been thinking about making a video discussing why we make video games. Like, just why do we make anything? Why do we make, like, art? Because I think, like, actively thinking about that as a creator is a good thing. And I mean that in multiple different ways. Like, why is the thing that we're making a video game and not a movie or a book? What does the medium of video game add to the product that we're making? And how can we, like, exploit that and, like, improve our product with that? But also, in a more general way, like, why are we making this video game? Because there's infinite things to make. Why are you working on the project that you're working on? And I think I can make, like, it's a bit more of a philosophical video to be 100% clear. But I think I have some, like, stuff to talk about there, and that might be interesting. The hardest thing is knowing when to stop and say it's good enough. Yeah, exactly. Specifically, if you've been in a project for a while, I forgot what level we're supposed to link to, 110. If you've been in a project for a while, and you are in the stage of, I hate everything about this, you're never gonna, like, feel that satisfaction of, okay, it's finished. We can leave it be. It is finished now. Which is why you make schedules and planning. Because then you will know, okay, at the start we said, if we have this, we're finished. We have this now. It's finished. We should just leave it be. In the ideal scenario, if we're just talking, like, purely artistically, at that point you leave it alone for a handful of months and then come back with a more objective, like, distanced view. In practical terms, that doesn't really work because, like, at some point something is finished and you gotta sell it. So that usually doesn't end up, like, working out that way. But ideally, you would have some time just away from it, just, like, scheduled in as, like, reflection time. But that very rarely actually happens in real context, because things just, like, need to be moving out the door and need to be finished. And I respect that. It's not like when I finish this game, I'm going to just sit back for half a year and wait while I have a effectively finished game on my hard drive and not publish it, right? Like, when this thing is finished, it's going to get published. I'm not going to, like, wait a year, because hopefully by that time there's going to be a lot of people, like, eagerly awaiting its release. Also, yeah, I talked about the walls maybe not being purple and using, like, different assets. This is the wall texture, and I kind of do like the ghosts in the wall. But I can do that with other materials as well. I think it's a little overkill, right? Having the, like, actual base color of the walls themselves being purple and then also throwing on purple lighting. So I probably need to do one or the other. I feel like doing the color theming for each dungeon with lighting just makes more sense than with the actual colors, but it's not only about creative stuff. The fastest between being dumb and being a genius is with programming. Yeah, no, that's definitely true. When something just works, you're like, I am a god, and then you write some very simple code that doesn't compile. You're like, I need to go back to primary school because I don't even know what math is anymore. Video games are one of the most immersive form of content creation. You literally have to interact with the content to enjoy it. Yeah, so that is the thing, right? I did this, like, podcast series with a friend of mine over the last, like, 2 years. We finished it now. We put it on hiatus because life gets busy. Where I, like, walked him through the entire story of the Kingdom Hearts series. Anybody who's played Kingdom Hearts, like, if you're into the type of game that I'm making, there's a good chance that you've at least experienced some of Kingdom Hearts. I would argue, because that's in a gameplay sense very much a big inspiration for, like, what I'm making. just somewhat less high-end, because I am not a team of 100 animators. Sadly, I am one dude in an attic. But I walked him through the entire story, and what ends up happening there is, aside from like pacing issues with the story because you're not having like 2 hours of gameplay between each cutscene, the Kingdom Hearts series, from like a story perspective, might as well be a movie series. It adds other things. It adds like feelings of enjoyment and satisfaction with its combat system, which is like generally very fluid and very satisfying, which is a lot of fun, which you can't get with just a movie. But as far as its story goes, Kingdom Hearts doesn't do much with its story that can only be done in a video game. Then what I was planning to do, what I haven't gotten to that yet because the podcast that we did is on a hiatus, but what I was planning to do is, after a while, I was going to walk him through the story of Undertale. Undertale, literally, to get the like story experience of Undertale, you couldn't do it in any other medium. Undertale only works as a video game. And I think that is fascinating. That is a game that uses its medium to the maximum capability of what the medium can do. Which is also why making a podcast explaining its story is fucking moronic. But what I was going to do, legitimately, is I was going to reconstruct like all the different cutscenes in effectively like a behavior tree task in an Unreal project, and just make a like PowerPoint presentation in Unreal with a bunch of branching paths. So that when we get to like a boss fight, I let him choose, do we kill this fight or not? And then still you don't have the layer that you do have in the actual like game for Undertale, where sometimes a boss fight is so frustrating that you end up killing it out of frustration. And that locks away like your full pacifist run. But even then, like, I would let them choose, hey, do we want to kill this fight? Do we want to let them live? And those will be stored as variables that I would then read in the diverging cutscenes. It was going to be a big project to make that work. But that's the only way that Undertale can work, right? I think Undertale is a fantastic example of like using a medium to its maximum capability, as I said. Where the fuck even are we? Okay, 1-9 stab up. Going to 170 hallway. But yeah, the video that I might want to make sometime in the future, maybe I'll make this like sometime next year, because I do think it's an interesting thing to like talk about, is partly about that. Why do we make it a video game? But also, like, every piece of media essentially has one of two purposes. Every piece of media is created to either transfer knowledge, like information, or induce emotion. Ideally, something would do at least a little bit of both. Of course, a history book should be as objective as possible, for instance. But even those, you could argue, get written in a way that is engaging to read so that you are inclined to read it, right? But minimally so. And in the same way, even a entertainment product that is designed to mostly just like incite emotion maybe is best off also incorporating some like actual learning elements that go beyond just emotional resonance. So that changes the, like, oftentimes when you make something and people are like all artsy about it, they're like, what story do you want to tell? I don't think that's the right question to like initially ask yourself when you create something. I think the question that you should be asking as a creator is not if you're making something like artistic, and I'm just like categorizing artistic as a piece of media that primarily focuses on the emotional part and not the informational part. You can have like very big arguments about what if that is a correct definition or not, but that's the definition that I'm operating under at the moment. I think the question you shouldn't be asking is what story do I want to tell and why do I want to tell this story? I think the initial first question that you should be asking yourself is what emotion do I want to create in the like the watcher, the viewer, the player, the consumer of this media. Because in the end, that is the thing that you're doing, is you're creating an emotion. So that should be your primary question. And from there, you can figure out, okay, so I want to create this emotion. How do I tell a story to do that? How do I create scenes and situations to do that? And that emotion to create can just be as simple as, I want to create a power fantasy. That is like 90% of what like a Batman game is. Like Batman games, yeah, they also have some like actual emotional like peaks that make you feel things, but about 90% of those games are just a power fantasy. I want to feel good beating people up. It can be as easy as that, but it is something that I think you should be like actively thinking about early on in a creative project. I play a lot of non-mainstream games, and I find a lot of games that I love dearly that are objectively are not good of a game. I mean, I have some of those as well. But they each gave you a hook, made big gameplay or story. Yeah, so like that emotion that I'm talking about, it doesn't have to be like very like dramatically motivated or anything. As I say, the Batman example, like just like beating up a lot of bad guys and creating that power fantasy, that is like a valid answer to that question. Like the what emotion do I want to create is a very broad question. And like any answer that you can think of is a correct answer in my book. But it is like just, it is something that I think pretty much anybody creating anything should consider. I think games are the most flexible type of media. I think games are most flexible because a game can, in the end, a game can just be a movie that you play through. And just due to the sheer fact that you are the thing, you are the person pushing the game forward. Like a movie will keep playing if you don't do anything. The only power that you have to stop a movie is actively like pausing it or ending it. Just the sheer fact that if you are playing through a game, it is you actively playing the game more that pushes forward the story. That in and of itself can be enough reason to make something a game over a movie. Because that creates more emotional resonance. So like when I say these things, like you should have a reason for it to be a game and not a movie. The barriers to entry for those things is fairly low. Like you don't need to write a whole thesis about it. But there should be things that you're actively considering, at least for like projects that you're going to spend a considerable amount of time on. Like for a game jam game, you don't need to go sit down and have like a 5-hour philosophy session thinking about, okay, but what is like the meaning of life through the lens of this game? Of course, like, no. But if you're about to like spend a year or multiple years working on something, I think it's worth going through like these types of questions about the thing that you're about to spend like a pretty considerable amount of your lifetime on this planet Earth on. What will you do about music in your game? Will you write your own or use royalty-free music? If I can at all get it done, I want to get a composer in on this, because there's a handful of blind spots that I have like entirely like no talent and skill in whatsoever in media production in general, but in game development in this case. And one of them is effectively anything to do with audio. I can do a tiny bit of sound design well enough by myself. But music is entirely outside of my realm of possible things to do. So I either need to stick with royalty-free AI generated, which I would rather not do for a release build, because AI generated music is getting better, but it's one of those things where it will never like quite capture the emotion that I wanted to capture. And like if we're talking about emotion, which we are because I decide so, the music and sound in general, but specifically the music, is probably the most like emotionally like triggering part of effectively anything ever. And that goes for sound in a wider sense. Sound is something, aside from your sense of smell, sound is the next most directly emotionally triggering sense for most people. Smell for most people beats it out, but we don't have like a dimension of smell. We don't have smell-o-vision or whatever in game development, so we can't really like use that. But that means that within the context of game development, sound is the most direct tool to somebody's emotions that we have. So it needs to be done well. And within that, obviously, music is the most powerful one. And I have just no skill in music production, so I need somebody else to do that. Play Final Fantasy 16 and God, while the gameplay was fire, get hooked in the story. I never want to kill a 3D character so much as the villain in that game. Man, dude, Ultima is a creepy motherfucker. As much as I was like going on a rant about like audio there, just having good character design makes something very like killable as well. Specifically, like the model itself, like the just character design is very good on him, but the way he is animated as well is so fucking uncanny and weird, and he's very killable. He's also very like a very flat, two-dimensional, boring character, in my opinion, but in a way that kind of works, because he is supposed to be like a distant god, effectively. So of course he doesn't have like a lot of depth. I absolutely adored Final Fantasy 16 though. I finished like the main story, which is about like 45 hours if you do all the side quests as well, without DLC. I finished that in like a week and a half. So I effectively played Final Fantasy 16 almost full time for a week and a half, in one of those weeks where I didn't have that much work to do, luckily. But once I got past the like 10-hour mark, I was like, I need to keep playing. I cannot put this game down. And at the point where I actually like finished the game eventually, I think I finished it at like 2 a.m. or something like that. I haven't had a game that like gripped me like that and had me like, you need to keep playing, since Kingdom Hearts 3. And I would argue that Final Fantasy 16 actually did it more than Kingdom Hearts 3. I think in general Final Fantasy 16 is a better game than Kingdom Hearts 3. It's probably the best Final Fantasy game. At least, no, I don't think it is. Because I think Final Fantasy games work better as turn-based RPGs. I think Final Fantasy X is the best Final Fantasy game. But Final Fantasy 16 definitely is the best real-time Final Fantasy game. Like the best action combat Final Fantasy game. And it might be the best, depending on what you think about Nier. Because that is technically also Square, right? I think Final Fantasy 16 also might be the best real-time combat Square game. It might just be one of the best action RPGs that I've ever played. It is a fantastic game. Oh yeah, no, the mother figure in Final Fantasy 16 is like I'm not gonna spoil it, but I was looking forward every time that was like, okay, we're in about the same area as this bitch. I really hope. Like, do you know Star Wars, like, not Jedi Survivor, but Fallen Order? No, one of the second one. Where at some point you have a boss fight against Rick the Doorman, who's like, for the Empire! And then you just, like, slice him in two. In, like, 1 or 2 hits. I really wanted a boss fight against that mother character in that vein, where you just get to absolutely destroy her. Because I wanted to murder that bitch. They did a very good job making her very hateable. And frankly, like with the ultimate villain, being so like flat and boring, it is very good that they had a different character that you could like actively hate a lot. And I'm not going to spoil too much about it because it's a relatively like new game, at least for PC. It's been out for like PS5 for a while, but it's also a fucking beautiful game. It's also a very heavy game. Holy shit, I had like areas where I legitimately, like I ran at like 40 FPS, which is insane. It's a very, very heavy to run game. At least at like max settings. I'm sure that you can like scale things down. So yeah, boss battles were fine. They needed to add a boss battle rush. Yeah, the like the icon battles are in general like just non-stop awesomeness. The human boss battles are, it's not a very deep combat system. It's very satisfying, it's very flashy, it's not a very deep system. I quite liked, I finished like 2 weeks ago or last week, I finished the chrono gates or whatever they're called, where you only have one icon's ability like per challenge. Those were a little bit more fun because those actually make you use the slight bit of depth that exists in all those abilities. But the abilities, they're just like very flashy and very satisfying, and that's exactly why I love it. But yeah. I wish that there was a mode, you can replay like chapters of the game, but I wish there was just a mode where you could replay specifically like specific boss fights. Because there is a handful of boss fights that I would just like, specifically icon boss fights, that I would love to just replay as boss fights on their own. Like, that Titan fight is fucking insane. It is actually, like, what the fuck? I haven't felt like an overexcited, like, 10-year-old like that since I was an overexcited 10-year-old. I was like, oh my fucking god, this is so fucking metal. And then, oh man, the next one after I think was Bahamut, right? It just fucking turns into like Dragon Ball Z. I think in the Discord server I made a joke after I beat that fight. It's like, okay, Final Fantasy 16 is now officially my favorite Dragon Ball Z game as well. Because that fight is just Dragon Ball Z. Like, you're just throwing Kamehamehas at that point. And I kind of love it. I mean, if I could do a Mortal Kombat finisher on that mother, character, that would be ideal. Yes, I would very much love to just like fucking rip out her jaw and crush her skull with it or something like that. I also did the DLC. When I finished the game, I immediately got the DLC. At this point, I've effectively 100%ed the game, aside from doing the very final fight in the like the ultimate challenges, the like the Gates of Hell. I died at the very last fight there. I don't really know if I feel like going through it, and like at some point in the future when I want to replay it, I'll probably play it in Final Fantasy mode, because I didn't love that you like when you die you spawn in with all your potions filled in. And apparently that doesn't happen in Final Fantasy mode. So that's fantastic. Because the game is a bit easy. I will admit. Like it's an easy game. I think I have all the doors in place here now. I'm just looking if there's any doors that I forgot, but I think we have a functional dungeon again. Yeah, and that leads over there. I mean, I still need to place down a door here for the eventual blue dungeon, but we're just gonna like kind of keep that for what it is now. Yeah, I think everything links up. So let's just walk through it real quick, because we can do that. Does this work? It does. Fantastic. So that means that we don't even have to redo the boss fight. But yeah, I played Final Fantasy 16 immediately after playing Final Fantasy 15 as well. And I was not a huge fan of 15. So I was like, oh man, maybe like modern Final Fantasy is just not it for me. And then I played 16. I was like, no, 15 is just a bad game. There's nothing to do with me not liking modern Final Fantasy, like real-time action, because I love Kingdom Hearts. It just Final Fantasy 15 sucks. Yeah, so the AI just kind of is there and sometimes deals some extra damage while you're not looking in 16. It's not a perfect game by any means, but it is still an amazing game. And like contrasting it to the absolute mess that was Final Fantasy 15, also maybe made it a little bit better in my eyes as well, because like 15 is just, man, I was very disappointed with it. I've heard people say that the mobile version is better because it doesn't try to be an open world game for the first half, and it actually like has focus as a result of that. So maybe I should try to play the mobile version of it at some point. But I also just didn't care about like the characters or the story, so I'm also not super inclined to do that. Because why would I? The reason people seem to like Final Fantasy 15 for the most part is because they get very invested in the characters. And I'm sure if you walk around in the open world and you get more character interactions, that happens more. But, like, to me, none of the guys were very likable. Like, we had Angry Boy, Quirky Boy, Brooding Boy, and British Boy. That is the extent of how far I care about their characters. And anybody who's played Final Fantasy 15 will know exactly who I mean by each one of those four descriptions, which kind of goes to show that I think I have a point. So like the thing that most people like about 15 just didn't land very well for me, I think, which is the character dynamic. And that is because I think those character dynamics lean very much on doing much of the open world content, which I skipped all the way through. Any moment that I was given like to explore the open world, I was like, okay, where's the next quest? I'm going there. What the fuck is happening here? Okay, that was a thing. Need to look into that. I think I know what is happening there. He's just not receiving any knockback. He's getting set to the knockback state with a power of 0. which actually, yeah, no, that makes sense. So yeah, I think this first loop is actually functional. Hated that guy with the camera. I know, right? He's annoying. It's also, I don't really care about Final Fantasy 15 at this point. Like, that's old enough, I think, to just talk about openly. At some point, after the game becomes linear, it almost becomes, like, good, right? Because it is now linear, and okay, I need to reload the game. And that's when it becomes good, because it actually gets focus back. But right around that time, we get, like, this whole story arc about Ignis getting, like, fucked in the eyes. Sorry, not Ignis. He doesn't have a name. British boy. Getting blinded. And first and foremost, I just do not care about him. So it doesn't really hit. The only emotional reaction to that I had was getting very annoyed by the fact that something that seems to be his characterization for the rest of the game effectively happens off screen, and we see later. That you could have included that in a cutscene while Noctis was kicking ass, Ignis trying to save a mother and a child, and getting hit by something you don't in the moment quite know what's going on. This also has negative knockback. In the moment you don't quite know what's going on, but then after you beat that boss fight against Leviathan, which by the way is very epic. Having all the weapons just unlocked and just going full apeshit on Leviathan is very epic. I do like that. That was a fantastic bit of that game. But after doing all that and I'm waking up and then realizing, oh, Ignis got fucking hit in the face and is now blind. I still wouldn't have cared a lot because I don't care about the characters, but at least it wouldn't be okay, I guess that happened. And that is then the central character conflict between the characters for a good little portion of the game. I think that could have been handled better, to say it mildly. Also, I need to get better at my own game because I suck. Because I'm rambling about Final Fantasy. Calm the fuck on, please just let me make the jump. Who designed this piece of shit? Oh, hold on. That was me. I guess we'll just use the dash. Anyway. Yeah, no female character in the party is also... I mean, I guess for the feeling of being just the guys on a road trip, you could have made it female. It's not... For me, not so much that there's a lack of a female character. I get where you're coming from, and there is something to that. The thing that kind of bothers me about that is that the only slightly relevant female characters are Luna, I think she's named, right? The the Oracle, which doesn't really have a personality. Let's be honest. She's a plot device, not a character. And then the only character that has any semblance of an actual personality, half her personality is having boobs. I don't know about that. I think Cindy is a little shallow as well. I think if there were legitimately strong female characters in the game, the lack of a strong female protagonist wouldn't be as big a deal, but it's just man, it's just this game was very much made for 14-year-old boys, and you kind of feel that in the way they handle female characters. Oh, there's the sister of one of those characters as well. She's kind of there, but she's, for anybody who's played Kingdom Hearts, I'm going to refer back to Kingdom Hearts again. She's just Kairi, right? The sister character in Final Fantasy 15, she's just Kairi with black hair. And you might be thinking, oh, that means she's Shion. No, Shion has a personality. She's Kairi. Yeah, the best female character in the game is Cindy, is the mechanic, but like also like half her personality is having boobs. That door doesn't work. Okay. Which is like not great, but she also like is slightly more like she has actual like personality. It's just like I feel like she's like because she's the only character that kind of matters. Why doesn't this work? This should work. Oh, hold on. This should lead to platforming. That's my bad. So that's 113. But again, I'm sure that if I played the game more than the bare minimum, I might actually care more for the characters as well. I'm just not a huge fan of open world games. And that's not because they're bad, it's just because they very rarely like hook me. Like Pokemon Legends Arceus was an open world game, like semi-open world, I suppose, like open worlds, just 4 different slightly open worlds. That game absolutely hooked me. I love that game very, very much, and I explored every nook and cranny in that open world. And it was a fairly empty open world, but I really did like it. But aside from that, like I tried playing Breath of the Wild, and I'm gonna try playing it again because now that I'm doing some more research about like cell shading, I started playing Wind Waker a little bit. I'm gonna be playing Breath of the Wild. Maybe I'll try to play a little bit of Tears of the Kingdom, because I kind of feel like I probably shouldn't be playing Tears of the Kingdom if I haven't finished Breath of the Wild. But I also feel like Nintendo probably wouldn't make that a game that you very much can enjoy as a standalone experience. So I might just like play a little bit of both to see how to deal with cell shading in dark areas. Because that is a thing that I'm like, what do they do with cell shading in dark areas? Because I think, as far as Wind Waker goes, they just don't have a lot of contrast. Like the darkest Wind Waker gets is about like a 30 to 40% guesstimation of brightness, and that is the darkest that Wind Waker ever gets. Like that is the absolute like blackest shadows in the game are actually about 40% bright. And I think that is also what I'm going to have to do, because my entire game effectively like takes place in enclosed spaces on the ground. So like what do I do with like the most shadowy parts? And with the cell shader, that is accentuated even more. So that is why, if you're in the Discord, I was so happy today to figure out that post-processing also has like an ambient light cube map slot. Because now everywhere in my game, you might notice as we're running through this, like there's no lights set up here, but it's still quite light. Well, actually there is light set up here, I think. Some bounce lighting and stuff. Everywhere has a like minimum intensity of light of about 10%. Like the darker bits that don't actually receive any lighting at all from any lights still have a brightness that is like way above black. Like those areas up there, right? Those aren't getting any light, but they're not black. If they added a DLC for about $20 US, let me replace party members, I would get it. I mean, that would be like a fine compromise. They did have the DLC, like the individual episodes for a bunch of characters, right? I didn't play those. The moment I finished Final Fantasy 15, I was like, okay, I'm buying 16 because I'm not spending any more time in this shit. And I was very glad that I did that, because I had a banging time with 16. And right now, I mean, I've thoroughly finished 16. There's literally no content left in that game for me to do aside from achievement hunting. And I've never been much of an achievement hunter. This doesn't go anywhere. I just realized. Actually, it does go somewhere. I probably should check. There we go. But yeah, now I'm playing Deltarune a little bit, because I finally figured, hey, I should play that. I've been playing a bit of Final Fantasy X, just like as a bit of a fun turn-based RPG. I started playing Hogwarts Legacy, but that game kind of sucks. Which is really disappointing because I have like very fond memories of playing the like old Harry Potter games and just exploring Hogwarts. And like, I don't care about like any of this story shit about Hogwarts Legacy. I just want a game that looks good in which I can just run a what the fuck? Okay. That's not what that was supposed to do. In which I can just run around in Hogwarts and just have a good time. It just links to the wrong thing, doesn't it? It is supposed to 1.5 balcony. What the fuck? This level just like doesn't have a proper streaming level, I guess. Combat grinding 114. I guess we'll set that up later. Because this apparently just, I guess we just like select these and move into combat grinding. Oh, this is actually a good example. Like, there's no lighting in here whatsoever, but it still has a base brightness. Which is nice. Does it still have that on the clipboard? It does. I think it is 113 platforming. Yes. But yeah, so Hogwarts Legacy is not that great of a game. Why do I infinitely keep moving down? Oh, why am I moving down? What the fuck is happening? Have you played Persona 3? Oh, okay, we fix it. 3, 4. I haven't played any of the Persona games. I know that I should. And to be fair, now that I have a Steam Deck, it's going to be easier for me to like pick up like games a little bit more casually as well. So hopefully I can do that. So yeah, that should hook up, and then we have, I think everything just hooks up now properly. Let's do one more run through for all that. What about Persona would be potentially interesting? Like, aside from the fact that they're just like generally regarded as good games, obviously. Oh, yeah, probably those shouldn't damage me when they aren't supposed to damage me. The turn-based RPGs, right? Which again, I very much like turn-based RPGs. I also like action RPGs, just to be like clear. Again, massive fan of Kingdom Hearts. Love Final Fantasy 16. Tolerated Final Fantasy 15. Not really, I hate that game. I really like, generally, action RPGs have a higher like peak for me, but also have a higher floor. Like an action RPG needs to be actually pretty good before I consider it to be pretty good. A turn-based RPG, as long as it's not like super stupidly like overly difficult and unbalanced, I can just enjoy fairly easily and casually. Like some of the actual old Final Fantasy games for like the actual NES and SNES releases of those games are insane. And even the like GBA remakes that Final Fantasy 1 through like 1 through 6, I think, got. Not the pixel remasters that exist now, but like the GBA remasters of them. Because I think the pixel remasters also have like sensible like modern game design and partly rebalanced things to be sensible. I'm pretty sure that the GBA versions of the Final Fantasy 1 through 6 games are just the original games with new sprites, effectively. And I don't know, man. Final Fantasy like 1 and 2 are brutal. I don't think I ever played the GBA version of 3 because I played the DS version of that one. But man, those games are fucking insane. It is like actually. Oh fuck. Okay, well, the doors work. I'm fine. We just need to fix some of that knockback stuff, but we can get that done another day. The original Final Fantasy game, like, there's hardly any room for you to like heal up with items, because you need those items because they're expensive, and like just like grinding, you don't make much of a profit because you need to then heal up again, right? And healing up isn't exactly cheap. When you're like in a proper dungeon. If you're just grinding outside of a town somewhere, I think you can like go into an inn. And that's cheaper. But that makes your grinding go a lot slower. So if you want to grind somewhat quickly, you're not actually making much of a profit. If you're like making a profit at all on your healing items. So you're probably not going to have a lot of healing items going into like mid to end game dungeons. Which then results in those dungeons being very long. By the time you get to the boss fight, you have like absolutely no chance because the basic enemies ruin your day. They also have a spin-off game, Persona Tacticia. So that's just like Final Fantasy Tactics for Persona now, right? And a dance game? You can skip those. I was gonna skip the dance game. If I had to say, as a game dev, the most interesting part is the way they do all the visuals UI mentioned. I do know that they have particularly like flashy and cool looking UI. I do need to warn you that all Persona games are very slow. Yeah, it's probably not going to be super high up on my to-do list because at the moment I'm like when I'm casually like playing games. I am finishing Deltarune. I'm like halfway through chapter 2 now, and hopefully sometime this century Toby Fox finishes that game with like chapter 3 through 5, I think. Supposed to come out in 2025, I think. And after that I might go back to Hogwarts Legacy, and for like research purposes I've just gotten the Wind Waker HD on my Steam Deck today, as well as Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So I'm going to be like doing those a little bit. I'm not going to finish any of those games probably, unless one of them really grips me, but I kind of doubt it because I'm not much of a Zelda person. From a gameplay perspective, I actually like most Zelda games for one way or another, like visually. They always have very like neat art styles. But I'm just not much of like a puzzly kind of dude. But I'm mostly playing those for like cell shading related reasons. So I'm going to be playing like a handful of hours of those, just like go through a couple of different dungeons to see, hey, Steam Deck, maybe actually I'll go to standby when I tell you to. I'm going to be playing through those just for a couple of dungeons just to see how they deal with cell shading. You need to like 3 or 4 hours before freedom, and as you go through the game, even more stuff unlocks. So you need to say like 10 to 15 hours until you get most stuff unlocked. Each game is like 80 plus hours. Man, that's the thing, right? Final Fantasy 16 took like a week and a half of my life away, and I just finished it in one sitting. With long games like that, it's either that for me or I don't have the like consistency to finish them. I find like a game either needs to be shorter than 20 hours, be so good that I don't care about my health for a week, or be okay with me not playing more than like a little bit past the tutorial effectively. Like those are, in a general sense, the 3 options that I have with like very long video games. If a game is like 10 to 20 hours, I can complete it in like a couple of like shorter sessions and like keep my mental health intact. But for longer games, for some reason, I can't just do like 1 hour play sessions times 80. I can do 1 hour play sessions times like 10, times 20, no problem. Times 50, times 60, times 80. For some reason that falls apart. I just can't keep the interest up for long enough for some reason. But I definitely want to play some Persona games at some point because a lot of people are like very like about them. But for now, not on the high on the priority list because I also still want to play Black Myth Wukong. That's very much a PC game, though, not a Steam Deck game. that is going to be running on a like proper GPU because that's not running on the Steam Deck APU. I believe none of that. And that is a fantastically beautiful game as well. So I want that to look as good as possible. I want to play that in HDR. That game looks fantastic. Let's actually see if there's a Steam sale. Probably not, right? It's probably not in the Steam sale. Where is Steam? There is Steam. Speaking of Steam, my game is on Steam now. You can wishlist it. There's a link down below in the description for anybody who hasn't done that yet. Gotta do the whole like YouTuber thing. Oh, Final Fantasy V is actually on sale. Final Fantasy 8 is on sale at 60% off. It's like €5.20 now. I might actually get that. Kingdom Hearts 3 is 35% off. Still like €40. Fuck off. I already own that game twice. I'm not gonna buy it again on Steam. Unless it runs particularly well on Steam Deck. But I can just get the Epic Games launcher on Steam Deck, I'm sure, so that's probably fine. What was I going to look up again? I was going to look up a thing. I don't remember what I was going to look up. I was going to look up if there's a game specifically on sale. Caffeine is running out. My brain doesn't keep track of information anymore. Oh, Black Myth with Wukong. It was released this year, so I very much doubt it. But let's just check. Yeah, Black Myth Wukong is still just full €60. That's a little much though. But it looks so good. I might like give it to myself as like a Christmas present. Because from what I've seen of it, I need to play it to like form a proper opinion on it, obviously. But the fact that it says Souls-like here, from what I have seen, this is incorrect. It is an action RPG, but I don't think it's a Souls-like, right? Like, not everything that is action RPG has to be a Souls-like. The fact that it has attack for Souls-like kind of worries me, because I generally don't love Souls games. But from what I've seen, it leans much more into like slashy action RPG than Souls-like. Almost like puzzle-solving combat. Oh, the game doesn't have mid-air combat. That's... I mean, for me, that's actually pretty good, because my game doesn't necessarily have mid-air combat either. It does have mid-air combat, it just does the same attacks while you're in mid-air. You don't lose anything by dying, you can respec at any time. Yeah, so just by virtue of those two things, I would say that that is definitely like not a Souls like that. Aside from just an action RPG that is difficult, a bare minimum for being a Souls-like is dropping your souls on death and only having one chance to get them back. If you don't have that mechanic, I think you're by definition disqualified for being a Souls-like already. Which is funny, because my game does have that mechanic, but I don't think it's a Souls-like. I'm actively like moving away from like slower, more methodical combat to move toward like more flashy, more like visually appealing combat. But I still like that souls dropping mechanic, so I still have that in my game. So it doesn't mean that when you do have that, you automatically are a Souls-like either. But I think if you're going to call yourself a Souls-like, you need specifically that mechanic. The only thing which is Souls-like about is that the bosses will kill you. I mean, that's what bosses do, right? That's what video game bosses do. And secret side quests are simply are obscure. I guess that is a thing. I don't know. From what I've seen, the combat looks, and maybe this is it's a little iffy because generally when I think Souls-like, I think fairly slow and methodical combat. Where, yes, your attacks take like 3 to 5 business days to actually come out after you press the button. But that is because when you decide to attack, you are committing to an attack. That is a strategical decision. But then I think like Bloodborne, which is also like a Souls-like game, obviously, and to a certain extent even Elden Ring, are a lot faster in some scenarios as well. So maybe a faster-paced game can still be a Souls-like, and that's mainly the thing where I'm like, if I look at the Wukong like footage, it very much feels like too snappy and too fast to really fall within what I envision when I think of a Souls-like. But maybe that's just my flawed interpretation of what a Souls-like should be and should feel like. It is for me, while developing my game, that is the line that I made. It's like, a Souls-like has to be relatively slow because doing an attack is a strategic decision, as I just said. The moment your game gets fast enough where doing an attack isn't necessarily the strategic decision anymore, in and of itself, I think you lose something central to the Souls-like combat. I think that is a better way to put it. In this game, it is better to be aggressive. After you master offense, you can forget about defensive play. In a Souls-like, that is, I think, not the case, right? In a Souls-like, it is very much about surviving until the moment you can attack, getting a couple of attacks in, because you know that now is strategically a good time to get a couple of attacks in, and then repeating that cycle. In that case, Zelda bosses are actually Souls bosses. Let's think about that for a moment. Let's think that, let that sink in. Zelda boss fights are Souls-like fights. You can't say I'm wrong. They follow the same pattern. Give you one better. Most Sonic boss fights follow that same pattern. I'll tell you what doesn't follow that same pattern. Most hack and slash RPGs. Kingdom Hearts very much tries to follow that pattern, but you can just wail onto your enemies until they fucking just break. Very occasionally they do an attack where you actually have to run away from them for a little while. But they don't have like the offense-defense cycle. Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 16, the games that we just talked about today, don't really have that cycle either, for the most part. Not in such like clearly divided sections anyway. In the end, most bosses in most games come down to offense and defense. It's just how rigid are those phases. Right? And I think in Souls games, those phases are about 99% rigid. Like, if a boss is attacking you, it is your job not to die. And then when a boss is not attacking you, it is your job to do some attacks. But that window is fairly small, and that's also like probably a part of the Souls-like thing. I also don't think Souls-likes necessarily are difficult. Like Dark Souls isn't difficult, it's just if you're used to playing games like what I'm making here, it's going to be difficult because you're used to just being able to mash your way through any boss fight. And I like mashing my way through boss fights. That feels good. Dark Souls, you have to use your brain a little bit. And yeah, you're going to die, but that's because you don't know the pattern yet. That's not because the boss fight mechanically itself is hard. It's because you're in the process of learning the patterns. Like, dying a lot doesn't necessarily, like, mean that something is difficult. Meaning, something being difficult, in my opinion anyway, means that the execution of it is difficult. And you're specifically getting better at the execution of those things. And to a certain extent, Dark Souls does have that, don't get me wrong. But the thing about Dark Souls is after you beat one boss fight, you start from like moment zero again with the next boss fight, because you didn't actually grow in the skill that the game is testing you on. You just learned the pattern of that boss fight, and then the next boss fight has an entirely different pattern. That is why every boss fight starts with you dying a billion times and slowly getting better. That is the gameplay loop of Dark Souls. But I don't think that means that it's difficult. I think something that is difficult is a skill, and a skill is transferable. As a person who finished all From Software games other than Elden Ring, at no point does it become easy. Yeah, but I think that is kind of my point, is if it was a skill thing, it would become easy at some point, because you would have gained the skill to like overcome that difficulty. But it's not a skill thing. It is a learning thing for each individual like instance, each individual boss fight. Which is what makes them fun and infuriating, because no matter how good you are at these games, you get good at the specific encounters in the games. Which means that when a new game comes out, you can re-experience being shit at it. Which is part of the fun, because you get to feel that growth and eventual like climax of like beating it, and immediately get like punched back down and like feel that growth again. That is what makes those games like fun and satisfying. And because it's not actually based on player skill, but on like learning the patterns, that is effectively infinitely repeatable. Anyway, I'm rambling again. It's been a fun stream. It's been a long one though. It's almost hitting the 3-hour mark. We finished up setting up all the doors in this dungeon. We've just been staring at this very empty room for the last like, I don't know, 25 minutes. For some reason, we still have 8 people watching this. At some point we were down to like 5. I was like, I'm just rambling too much. People don't want to see that. But you guys are staying, so I don't know what's wrong with you, but congratulations. Find therapy. Sometimes I wish I had a BetterHelp sponsorship just for the shits and giggles. But I don't. So don't go get therapy at BetterHelp, because they don't pay me. That's how we do it. I'll be back on Tuesday again, unless my project corrupts again, but fucking I hope it won't. And we will probably actually be getting started with either implementing some kind of interaction system for the game, because I have this like examine button that doesn't do anything. Right? This examine button doesn't do anything yet, but I want to be able to like I don't know what I want to do for the interaction system quite yet, to be fair with you. I think for the interaction system, what we'll end up doing is just a like interface based system. maybe we'll see. I don't know quite yet for sure, because I would also maybe like to like gray out the examine button when there's nothing to examine. And I would also like to have like a little like widget pop up on top of the thing that you can examine when you're in range to examine them, which would imply maybe like somewhat more of a component based approach to things. I'm thinking, or maybe like even a sub actor that deals with all that. And that can still use a interface, obviously, because I also want that examine button to, for instance, trigger things like the save point. So I'll still do that through an interface. But I'm kind of just thinking is, for other like miscellaneous stuff, how do I want to set it up? Do I want to... I'm not entirely sure yet. I might also just... do something where I run a check every frame effectively with the same code, honestly, as my targeting system, but just for, instead of closest enemy, is closest interactable object, and do it that way. That might actually make sense, yeah. And then run an interface on those. And then each one of those can decide like what kind of icon they pop up with. That makes sense. I think I'm going to do that. So we might do that interaction system, because we're probably not going to use too much of that yet, because that's going to be a thing like when we actually start putting in art assets. I want to be able to like put examine text on like things so that you can walk up to something and read about it. Just like a little flavor text for the world. But we need to at some point put in that system. And we still need to finish up some magic spells. Let's see. Find traps maybe. Depends on what you have in game. Not entirely sure about that. But that's always good for like level design purposes, I guess. If you don't have puzzle or platforming with interaction, not sure. So yeah, the interaction is mostly probably going to be for like just like world building, like flair text kind of things. Maybe in some cases it will also allow us to do like puzzly things, like in a maze. Maybe not in the maze in this dungeon, but in a different dungeon. Maybe it'll allow you to like move some walls around or some shit like that. I don't know. But just generally having an interaction system to just say, hey, I press the triangle button and now you do your interaction thing. So very much an interface based thing. Will be nice to have. Mostly, again, at the moment I'm thinking for flavor text, but also eventually maybe for more like gameplay related stuff. Having it as an option is probably going to be like nice to have. And maybe for item pickups, I'm thinking item pickups I might do just by collision. But maybe if you press the examine button when there's nothing nearby to examine, it'll just like get all the nearby experience and items and like pulls them into Word or something, is the thing that I've been thinking about as well. So there's quite a lot to consider there. So that might be fun to do on Tuesday. If I don't feel like doing that, we'll just do some magic spells, because there's a lot of magic spells that I still want to do. Though neither of those necessarily need to be there for my playable test build, and to be fair, I want to have my playable test build ready next Wednesday. So yeah, yeah. I think this weekend I'm gonna do like some video production for like my quest series as well, so I don't have a lot of like programming time. So maybe on Tuesday we'll just do like some finishing touches, because I want to have on December 4th, I have an opportunity to like maybe go have some in-person tests again. So I kind of want to have everything ready for then. So I think we're just kind of going to be finished with it at that point. Which is good, because then we can... Okay, so I don't know what we're going to be doing on Tuesday. I guess on Tuesday we're going to be... Yeah, new plan. New plan. On Tuesday we're going to be implementing some tutorialization, I think. I'm going to build some basic tutorialization, which is going to... Well, that probably would hook into an interaction system as well, right? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But we'll have to build some basic tutorialization for like that test demo, and then just saying things like, hey, kill enemies to pick up items, that kind of stuff. And then maybe what we want to do is also start looking into building like drop tables for enemies as well. But then we would need to have like a crafting system to take advantage of that as well, and I need to still program that. So I don't know that we're going to be done with all that in time, and I don't really want to be adding new features on Tuesday if I'm going to be testing on Wednesday. So I think I'm just going to give the testers a whole bunch of spells in the chest and just tell them to go at it, to be honest. Yeah, so I think next week on Tuesday the stream will be just a bunch of like tweaking stuff, adding some tutorialization, just general development. I don't think we're going to do like a single thing. Because fucking November is already finished. Where did the month November go? What the fuck? Anyway, it's been a good one. I don't think... unless your game has grinding as part of the game loop. Yeah, so the crafting system is just to craft items and mostly to craft spells. So what we have now is, if I just like load one of the save files and I open like my thing up, like I just have these spells in here. The idea is that we have a shop to like buy some like basic potions and kind of stuff on save points. We also have a crafting menu on there, and you take monster drops and mix those together, and sometimes maybe actual like in-world items that you pick up that I place down like as part of the level design, and you put those together to create the magic spells. Which means that things like the summons that we've been working on are going to be relatively rare, because they're going to rely on having relatively rare drops from the specific enemies that you create in the summoned versions of. So throughout an entire like playthrough of the game, you're only likely to probably like unlock like 3 to 5 of them, something like that, right? And like some of these more basic spells, this might require like a flame essence and like a basic magic essence, and basic magic essence can be dropped by a bunch of different enemies, and a flame essence by a other smaller selection of enemies, and that is what you need a crafting system for in this case. So we don't get like an entire like Minecraft system here, but it's just we have this item system, and I'm like hooking some basic crafting up to it as a method of crafting maybe more powerful healing items, but mostly to craft spells. Is there a way to farm enemies? Yeah, just when you leave and re-enter a room, all the enemies respawn. And there's probably gonna be... I'm not entirely sure about it yet, but I maybe want to add in a handful of rooms for level grinding purposes as well. That I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do with yet. Either just like endless spawning of enemies, but I also have this idea for an enemy that starts out weak, and every time you beat it, it respawns more powerful. And it will drop more experience, but also its chance to drop like good loot will increase or something like that. So that's like a specific enemy designed for grinding. Maybe we can add a pity system. If they kill, let's say, 20 of that enemy, rare drop is guaranteed once. Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's a good idea. Kind of depends. Like, part of the reason that I want to have a very wide selection of spells is so that if you just play through casually, you're going to have the ability to craft like a good number of spells. If you are like very like hardcore playing the game and you want to get like a very specific spell, mostly to do with like the summons. Like the summons are going to be relatively rare and difficult to get. That's going to require grinding, but for the most part, if you just like kill everything that you come across, you're probably going to end up with enough items to craft like a good amount of spells throughout the game. And every single playthrough is probably going to have like a slightly different loadout as a result of that, but that's like kind of the point as well. So like if I only had like 10 spells and you need to like hardcore grind to get any number of those 10 spells, like a pity system might make sense, but the way I envision it is there's going to be a wide enough selection that people are going to end up with enough spells to use. And you can only use 4 at a time anyway. And that also takes in like healing item slots. So you're probably only going to like run 2 or 3 spells at any given time anyway. Great Thanksgiving. I entirely forgot Thanksgiving is a thing, isn't it? Hello, Europe here. Have a good Thanksgiving. So that is kind of like the balance and the ins and outs of like the crafting and the magic system. Most of the inventory system is going to end up actually being the magic system. As a guy who grinds 100%, 100% grinds the games, I will be stuck farming for days. I mean, am I going to make an achievement for getting all the spells on one save file? Probably. Yeah. Because I like bullying people who hunt achievements. But for like a casual player, I think it's going to be fine. If you want to like 100% grind it, it's going to take a little while, I think. But also, I don't think it's going to be that bad because it's probably going to be something like your average like shaman enemy has a 50% chance of dropping like a magic essence, and you need like 3 magic essence plus some other ingredients for your average spell. But just like going through 1 or 2 dungeons, you run into like enough shamans to make 2 or 3 spells. It's just then the random chance of these other drops that you can get that decide just randomly what spells you can craft. And if you specifically like know a crafting recipe to go for a spell that you want to get, well, that's entirely on you then. But yeah, I'm very likely to make an achievement for getting all the spells in the game. I am also, to make that even worse, I'm highly considering trimming down the inventory and making the inventory expansion a level up thing. So we have this stats menu, and this stats menu itself is going to get more stats, because I also want magic is going to change into just MP. I'm going to have a separate magic damage stat. And I also now have a piercing damage stat. I think I'm also going to make that an upgradable thing. It's going to be fairly expensive because it's very overpowered to have that up very high. And then I think I'll also have an inventory expansion level up. So you're going to start with probably like 10 inventory slots. And if you want to get all these spells, you're also going to, because you have no other storage other than your inventory, if you want to get all the spells, you also need to grind out levels to get all the inventory space to hold those spells and the items you need to craft them. So that's probably going to be a bit of a nightmare. But that's the thing that I'm also considering. I don't know that I'm going to do like the inventory expansion thing based on level ups yet. I feel like I will, but I don't know yet. How to pass your information through levels or maps. I have a video about that. The easiest way to do that is to keep that information or send that information to your game instance. And then on begin play, get it back from your game instance. Or doing it in a save game object. The downside to using a save game is that it is you're constantly reading and writing from disk, which is very slow compared to things in memory. So you probably don't want to do that. But if you have your save system, and I really want to make a video specifically about this as well. If you have your save system set up properly, what you should be doing is you shouldn't be like updating, like creating and then writing a full like save object the moment you want to save. The better way to do it is to have a save object like as part of your game instance or whatever, always in memory that you're actively, whenever something updates, writing to. And when you save the game, you write it to disk. But you're constantly like updating it, but just in memory. And if you're doing that, you always have that object in your game instance with like all the relevant data. So when you enter a new like level, you can just pull it from that save object as well. So that is probably like, it is a better way to deal with your save files as well. Because it doesn't like bottleneck you as much when you want to save something and your game hangs for like a second. And it also makes carrying data between maps, like making some data persistent, easier. Where's the video? I don't know. It's somewhere on my channel. I think if you just look for something along the lines of carrying data between levels or something like that, you should probably be able to find it. Let me see. There's another person with another question. I'll answer probably tomorrow. Like between levels, let's see. Yeah, carry data between levels with game instance is what the video is called. I will just drop a link in chat for it as well. That's a basic setup. Again, I want to make a video about like a better practice to like maintain your save data object as well, like in real time, which would just be a probably better way of doing things than it would be for this. But this will work, and maybe sometime in the next month or two that new video will come out and whatever. But for now, just like do it this way, and that's fine. Make an extra achievement for getting X+1 spells in the game and only have X amount of spells just to drive people insane. I don't know. I don't know how much like research Steam does on games and achievements. But does Steam even allow impossible achievements? Hold on. This is actually an interesting question. Does Steam allow impossible achievements? All the achievements are defined at Steam webpage. Impossible achievements exist, some by accident and others as a result of time locks. Let's see. You have full control over how achievements are unlocked using their API, including making it impossible to be unlocked. That is really funny. Oh, that is fucking hilarious. I'm definitely gonna do that. If they allow that, I'm definitely making an impossible achievement. Because that is really funny. As a completionist, I dislike the ID. Yeah, that's the point. I want to bully people like you. that's the point, Radizor. That is entirely the reason. Oh, I am 1,000% gonna do that. That is so fucking funny. Anyway, it's been a good stream. I'm gonna head out. I will see you all back on Tuesday when we do like some shit. Have a good weekend, everybody, and stay. I was gonna say stay safe, but you guys don't leave your house, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So stay something. You decide.